Section 4. Ethnophilosophy. Introduction. In this study session, we will examine the concept and features of ethnophilosophy. We will also discuss criticisms that have been leveled against this trend. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Explain the features of ethnophilosophy. 2. Discuss the criticisms of ethnophilosophy. What is ethnophilosophy? Ethnophilosophy is a trend in African philosophy, focusing on the documentation of the mythical concepts, ritual practices, proverbs, and institutions of different African ethnic groups. As we already know, this trend was championed by Placide Tempels. His followers include other religious persons or theologians, such as J.S. Mbiti, E. Bolaji Idowu, and anthropologists like Marcel Grill, Alexis Kagame, and Robin Horton. According to K.A. Owolabi, the main aim of this group of scholars was to 1. Debunk Eurocentric views of such scholars as Hegel and Levi-Brough that we studied earlier. You will recall that Hegel, Levi-Brough, among others, said that African peoples are incapable of thinking and reasoning properly like other human beings. And 2. Make African mentality and culture understandable to the Western people, especially for the purpose of the colonizing project. From Owolabi 2000, we can outline several features of ethnophilosophy as shown below. Features of ethnophilosophy. 1. An acceptance of the descriptive approach as the best method of extracting African philosophical materials from the body of African folk beliefs, traditional African worldviews, their stories, songs, and mythologies. 2. A general belief that all African societies have the same culture. 3. A desire to draw a sharp demarcation between African beliefs and ways of living, on the other hand, and European assumptions and lifestyles, on the other hand. 4. Ethnophilosophy also thrives on the belief that philosophy in the debate sense, that is, philosophy in its simplest and common man's view, can pass as real philosophy. 5. A sentimental and romantic attachment to African past, so much so that criticisms of the cultural fact are completely avoided. 6. A conception of philosophy as a communal project rather than that of the individual. The belief among ethnophilosophers is that the community wisdom can pass as individual philosophy or as rigorous and critical philosophy. Criticism against ethnophilosophy. Many people have attacked ethnophilosophy and its supporters. One of the most outstanding critics of ethnophilosophy is Pauline Otunji, the man who is believed to have coined the word ethnophilosophy himself. Although he denies the same, Nkrumah had used it before him. Otunji's critique of ethnophilosophy is that it pretends that a mere documentation of traditional African folklores, worldviews, and cultural practices can pass as philosophy. Indeed, for Otunji, this mistake came about in the first instance because ethnophilosophers failed to make the necessary distinction between philosophy in its strict critical and reflective sense, on the other hand, and it lost the base common man's sense. Ethnophilosophers wrongly presented the base common man's view of philosophy as authentic African philosophy. For the purpose of easy understanding, let us itemize some of the major criticisms against ethnophilosophy. 1. The first main attack against ethnophilosophy follows from Utunji's views above. It is said by the critics of ethnophilosophy that it seems to be implying that Africans are only capable of practicing the weak or debased form of philosophy and not the rigorous or critical form of it. Ethnophilosophy has also been criticized for over-romanticizing the African past. In other words, some people have criticized ethnophilosophers for writing as if our past was very glorious. After all, according to the critics of ethnophilosophy, that same African past traditional practices allowed only a few Europeans to carry away many of our able-bodied men and women into slavery and later colonization. There is, therefore, a need to be critical of such African past beliefs and customs. Another very serious attack on ethnophilosophy is the claim that ethnophilosophy is merely targeted at helping the Europeans to subvert the African mindset for the purpose of colonization. In other words, ethnophilosophy does not actually favor Africans, since the idea is not to understand the African as a person worthy of a serious discourse about his culture and development. In spite of all these attacks, let me say that ethnophilosophy did an enormous good to African philosophy. This is because without ethnophilosophy, there wouldn't have been other trends in African philosophy. After all, as the Outlaw and Oruka have rightly observed, in its inception Temple's work served a positive function. It challenged common notion that the Africans were completely sterile in intellectual and moral production of his own. Study session summary. In this study session, we discussed the meaning and futures of ethnophilosophy. You learned that it's a trend in African philosophy, focusing on the documentation of the mythical concepts, ritual practices, proverbs, and institutions of the different African ethnic groups. We also discussed the criticism against ethnophilosophy. End of study session 4.